Well, I'm still in the process of assembling the seat arms and the backs on these two Yellowstone coaches, this 8-passenger and this 11. I have the arms cut out to their rough shapes. I'm going to start to just kind of temporarily install these on either side, so then I can get some more accurate measurements for the backs, because there are some variations in the widths from the passenger seats to the driver's seats. And as it turns out, all the seats end up being different. The two driver's seats are different widths. The second seat and the first passenger seat on the 11 passenger are different because of the curve of the body. And the main passenger seat in the 8 passenger is different again. So all these have to be cut out individually. So I'm just going to kind of dry assemble these seat arms on both sides, and then I can get a measurement for the back. And since these boards are only 5/8 of an inch thick, I do want my screw to be as close as possible right to the center of that board, and that's always a challenge. So I line up my outside edge to the bevel where I want it to be, and I'm going to draw a line where the edge of that seat arm is. And I'm going to measure that angle. Right, like so. And I can find the center between my bevel and the edge of my board, and I want my screws to come right into the center of that board. So, kind of right in here. And looking at the underneath side of these old seats, I have 3 screws, here, here, and here. And looks like I'm coming in 3 inches. I'm splitting the difference here on this board and coming in roughly a couple inches. So about 2 from the front edge. Split the difference here and come in 3 inches there. So the goal is to have my screw right in the center and have it come at the right angle. And that should put me in the center at the right angle and keep the screw right in the center of this board. So these arms and the backs are cut at this bevel, so they want to slide when you put them into place. So I'm going to put a little bumper board there right along that edge where I want that edge of that board to be. Kind of prevent that sliding. That'll keep her in place. So this is an 8-passenger driver, and I want to be 48 and a half, so 49 and a half, give myself a little extra at the base where the arms are going to come, I show 42 3/4. So overall width, 49.5 by 8 1/4. So this is the driver's seat that actually came off of this 11 passenger. And if I check the height of that after the bevel is cut, I'm showing 7 1/4. So 8 1/4 will give me enough room to cut that bevel and then do the final curve fit. So in order to save me a lot of time setting up the table saw to do all these angles, I'm going to put all the arms on, and I can come back and cut my links and my bevels all at the same setting. So I've got all my seat backs made for each individual seat, and they're probably about an inch, maybe ½ inch to an inch long, so I have some room to trim. I have a little defect here, but actually it's going to get cut out by the time I trim the seat arm down and bring this down in the curve. All this is going to disappear, so we're okay here. So this bottom angle of the seat arm is 26 degrees, and I had marked out that this is 30 degrees. So this angle here is kind of important. I have the back marked at 15 degrees. It's not quite so important. because in the end this will actually get rounded away to match the seat base here. But this generally I want to fall in line with the back of the seat. Now when I cut the angle on the seat back, that 15 degrees becomes more important because it has to line up with the face of the seat arm. And then this degree here I have marked on my pattern to be at 22. So this angle has to match this angle here in order to butt up there correctly. So then the face of this angle becomes more important to line up with the seat arm. So early on when we first started doing these Yellowstone coaches, we started out with a radial arm saw. And it is similar to these compound miter saws, not quite as nice, but it allowed us to do multiple compound angles. Well, I haven't used that for a number of years. I have kind of migrated to this 1908 Fay Egan saw until just about a month or two ago that I did buy this Makita compound sliding miter saw. And so the question has been kind of in my mind as I'm doing this. I've always done it on this saw. Is that sliding compound miter saw better? I do like this style of saw better than my radial arm saw, mainly because it allows me to bring the blade forward on my board and cut into the rotation of the blade. As opposed to the radial arm saw, you have to start here and just go straight forward. You don't have the ability to lift the blade like you do on these saws. So in that regard, I do like this saw better than my radial arm. When you run a radial arm, you have to pretty much just stiff arm it so it doesn't climb into the cut. Where this, you can bring it forward and cut like a normal blade does, and all of you are familiar with this saw. So I do like this better than the radial arm saw. And when it comes to putting a bevel on the table, we have nice wide marks, so it's easy to bring this pointer into the degree that we want. So if I was going to cut 22 degrees, it automatically has 22 and a half, but I can put that right at 22. And the accuracy is pretty attainable. So if I'm going to do that on my table saw, on this particular saw, you say this is a 1908 Fay Egan, I do have the option of this angle fence, and as you have all seen before, it is marked out pretty clearly right on the table itself. And these markings are about 1/4 of an inch apart, so it is easy to find those individual degree markings and set that up pretty accurately. And even if I want to split degrees, I can do 5. I could go halfway through that and get my 5 and a half. You know, so it is really nice on this saw that I can adjust this fence real accurately. Maybe a little more than that compound saw just because these are a little wider, but they're certainly wide enough on that miter saw. Now when it comes to putting the tilt on this blade, these markings are a whole different story. We've got from 0 to 45 within about 2 inches. And you can see just how close all those markings are. Now I'm kind of in the senior years and my eyes aren't the best. This becomes much more difficult to get those specific degrees. They are like a 1/16 or less between the marks. So you know, on this old Fay Egan saw, the table tilts instead of the arbor. But I have probably 5 inches of range here, so the markings between these degree markings are twice as wide or better than it is on that compound miter saw. So it is easier on this saw to tilt in essence, the blade, even though I'm tilting the table, whereas tilting the blade on that compound miter saw, that's much more difficult to get that accurate. So I do still have my old radial arm saw from years ago, kind of stuck in the back recesses. But if I want to tilt this blade, I have the degree markings here, and it is pretty similar to that sliding compound miter saw. They are pretty close. From 0 to 45 is maybe a couple inches, so that is similar. And then if you want to tilt the blade, these radial arms have the whole head that rotates, and the degree markings are up here on the post, and they are also really close together. And this is the gauge, and it's difficult to get it super exact, but this is what I used for years and years. So in comparison of the 3 saws, that Craftsman was built in the late 70s, that Makita is a brand new saw as of a month or 2 ago, and this 1908 Fay Egan, it does have the sliding table on it, but the ability to get accurate measurements on the angle here to be able to tilt the table, it's not as nice as a new saw that tilts the blade. But the spacing between the degree markings for the table tilt is easier to read by far than both the radial arm saw and that sliding miter saw. So if I was going to set this up for the angle cut, I would set this either side of 0. I can go to 22 that direction, and I can come to 22 this direction. Very easily seen, very easy to set up, even for my old eyes. I'll set that at 22, and then if I want to set this at 15, that's fairly easy to see, right at 15. And this table is easily changed from both directions as well. So I can go from 22 degrees that way, to 22 degrees this way, and it's easy to set up. And now if I want to tilt the blade, these markings here are marked out clear at the 15, 30, 45. So if I wanted to go to the 15, that's pretty easy to see right there because it's a pretty bold mark. But if I wanted to go to 16, it becomes a little more difficult. Not impossible, but it's more difficult to be that accurate. Or if I wanted to bring it back to 14. Again, it's a little more difficult to see, especially with my eyes. But we'll put that at 15. And it is nice that this can go either direction. I can bring it 15 degrees this direction as well. So that is a nice feature. It's just difficult to read. So I did cut out a test scrap piece with the same 34 degrees that the back is going to be. So if this was going to be the right side, I would mark this direction and then this direction to give me a reference of how I need to have this saw set up. So if I was going to saw this angle at the 22 degrees, I would have it cut this direction, and my bevel is going to be this direction. So just how I have this saw set up is how I would make that cut. Now if I'm going to cut my left side, my angle has to be cut this direction. My bevel on the back is correct with the tilt of this table. But now I need to move my fence 22 degrees the other direction. That's going to be right there, and I can lock that into place. So then I need my angle to come this way and my bevel that direction, which is how my table is set up, and then I can do the cut that direction. So in order to do this on this table saw, I have to have a straight board. It has to have parallel sides in order to go from this direction to this direction. like so. I have to have a straight board. And if you remember when I cut the seat arms, I had a wide board and I was able to rotate the pattern on that board to get my two arms and minimize my waste. So I didn't cut two parallel pieces. I actually bandsawed a crooked line between those two patterns. And that's why I couldn't cut it on this table saw, is because I didn't have parallel lines. That's why I went to the new sliding compound saw, and that one worked with just one straight edge. If I took my pattern, which has one curved side and one straight side, I was able to use that straight pattern this direction. My blade would actually be turned this direction for this cut. And then, still using my straight edge, I could move this fence this direction to my 22 degrees. In this case, actually is 30 degrees. So I would bring it to 30 degrees. And now my tilt of the angle is correct, and I could make that cut. So that was the advantage of this saw, is I could cut the angle and the bevel on this with only one straight edge, whereas on my table saw I have to have two straight edges. So I've got two saws 117 years apart. 1908 Fay Egan, 2025 Makita. I have my table saw set up for my left side cut, and I have the Makita set up for the right side cut, and we'll see how they do and fit up to my seat arms. So the right side is the Makita cut. It seemed to be right there. And for just kind of freehand holding this together, 15 degrees is right there as well. And the left side is my Fay Egan. Get that held right up to the bevel there. That seems to be there as well on the 22. And I'd also say our 15 is right there as well. So both of them making pretty comparable cuts, of course, all the same degree settings. So as I would have expected, both set up the same are going to make the same cut. Now, are there advantages, disadvantages? Yes. That Makita is a portable saw. This Fay Egan definitely is not. You know, I get a lot of you folks that are stopping by on your vacations, and you all like this saw as well as I do. And I have told a great many of you who have come, if you can pick it up and carry it off, you can have it. I wouldn't dare say that about my Makita, because you could pick it up and carry it off. This saw, you can't budge it without a forklift or a tractor. I have to have parallel boards in order to do these opposite corner cuts, whereas the Makita, I can have just one straight side. That is an advantage. I do have a pretty coarse blade on this saw, but I also have the option of a fine cut blade, so I have a dual purpose on my dual arbor saw. The Makita doesn't, short of just changing the blade out. But, do they both work? Yeah, they both have their place, obviously. Which one do I like? I actually like them both. How about expense-wise? This Fay Egan cost me $300. I know, don't cringe. The Makita, it was a lot more than $300. But 117 years apart, do they do the same thing? they do with some pros and cons both ways. I like this '08 Fay Egan saw because it fits the era of what I do. Can it do what that compound saw does? Yes. Can it do more than that compound saw does? Yes. But does that compound saw have a place? Yes. Will that Makita be around in 117 years? I doubt it. So anyway, just kind of a quick, fun comparison of two saws when it comes to cutting compound miter joints in a wagon seat or a stagecoach seat. For what it's worth, appreciate you coming along. Thanks for watching.